Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Happy and blessed Monday, and welcome to episode 552 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, a continued blessed Easter as we continue our way through this amazing Easter season. Lots of stuff going on this past weekend and into this week. Obviously, Thunderbolts from the MCU has officially come out. And let's just say the conversation online is very, very interesting because though most people, if they are honest, will admit that the film's opening weekend is objectively not good. Again, on paper, it is the second worst opening for an MCU film in the history of the MCU. And this is whether you are looking at the overall box office, when you, of course, compare those numbers adjusted for inflation, as that's the only fair comparison between films made today and films made even 10, 15, 20 years ago. The value of the dollar has changed quite a bit. Or if you don't like that, even if you compare ticket sales and the estimated ticket sales from their opening weekends, guess what? Things still not looking all that great. But what might be even more interesting is the conversation about whether this film is good or not. There's been a lot of discussion, especially on the app Criticlist. As you all know, I'm a very big fan of Criticlist.com. There is, of course, the Criticlist app also. And it is a very mixed response. There are some people going out of their way, it seems, to just artificially prop it up with some rad and most excellent scores. There are also some that seem to be trying to drive it to be more artificially low with very low, heinous, or even some bogus scores. Now, I, of course, gave it myself a bogus score because the film objectively is bogus. Problems with it. And that's not just looking at the political ramifications of the storytelling, but also of just the movie itself. But there is a debate. So what side of the debate are you on? I imagine that many of you are on the, you don't care enough to even watch the movie in the first place. And I would say you're saving yourself a lot of time and maybe even some money. So we'll talk about that. And also, we are indeed in the midst of the Easter season. And guess what? On Wednesday of this week, there's a certain conclave starting, which means that we will have a new pope, a new leader, a new vicar of Christ for the Catholic Church, probably by Thursday or Friday of this week. Based off of just the general historical trends, most conclaves do not last longer than 2 or 3 days, with the longest in recent history, last 100+ years, was about 5 days. So I suspect that we will probably have an answer either by Thursday or Friday of this week. If it goes through to Saturday or even Sunday, what's going to happen? I don't know. Because, again, a lot of people claim to have some types of information, or at the very least seem to try to make it seem like they have certain kinds of information and inside sources, but really no one knows. No one knows exactly where the hearts of those men are going to be pulled once they are behind closed doors. It's always one thing when you're in front of the cameras. It's always a very different thing when you actually have to kind of face your maker, as it were. So let's go ahead and dive into the comment section. We had King Kane Rumsky hanging out at 4:08 today. Got on very, very early, I see. So King Kane Rumsky saying, holy crap, time is flying today. It is. Really, it's been flying the last couple of weeks. And really the entire quarter, the entire semester even. I can't believe that we're already in May. I can't believe we're in, for us, we're in our last full week of school. We have just a couple of days, like 2 or 3 days next week, and then our exams start. We have this weird schedule where our exams for our students are actually going to start on like Thursday and Friday. So that is crazy. And it's obviously very exciting for me because summertime is always a great time. And it's one of those things where as you get older, it's great for different reasons, right? When you're younger, it's, oh man, I can't wait to do nothing all summer or to do summer camp or whatever it might be. And then as an adult, for me, it's like, oh man, there's so many projects around the house I've been wanting to do, and I finally get to do it. I finally get to organize this closet, our under our stairs closet, our downstairs closet. I finally get to organize that. Isn't that amazing? I finally get to to do all of those things that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. So looking forward to it. Sorry, I saw someone mentioning something about the sound cutting out. I really hope that is not the case. The sound shouldn't be cutting down. Now, if it's peaking, it could very well be peaking. If that is the case, please let me know. I have not had anyone say any issues with my volume, except on FNT, I think, last week, where people said I wasn't, or at least one or two people said I wasn't loud enough, and it wasn't people that typically would be wanting to troll me. So if that is the case, let me know if it is peaking, and I can try to adjust it in real time. And again, I apologize if for any reason it is peaking in any way. I'm not an expert on these things, so... Sounds fine. Had lag spike issues, I think, says Cthulhu. Okay, good. As long as it's not a consistent issue, then I am going to be happy with that. I don't have my VPN on, so it shouldn't be that. Before going any further in those comments, though, I do have to get to some Rumble rants, because Abomination, woo, thank you very much for dropping a $20 over on the Green Machine. Very generous of you to do so, man. Thank you so very much. And thanks for hanging out over on the Green Machine, too. Saying, I guess I'll concede that Captain Falcon finally passed $200 million worldwide. Strange flex to purchase $215 million worth of tickets just to win some random bet. Oh, man, oh, man. I don't know exactly what you are looking at, because the film has, at this point, not crossed $200 million. It's at $160 million currently. Now, it is definitely going to pass $200 million by the end of this weekend. That's for sure, right? This upcoming weekend. But, yeah, I almost forgot about that bet, actually. I forgot that there was some type of thing. Again, because we have to remember, there's always a guaranteed audience when it comes to the MCU movies. And even though the film is on the cusp of getting $200 million, that does not mean that it's going to make that much more than that. Now, I'm the first to admit, I think the word of mouth on this movie is much better than what Captain America was, right? So much better than that. And I just also realized that you're actually talking about Captain Falcon and not about Thunderbolts. So, yeah. That's why I do this live, because it keeps me honest. But anyway, thank you very much for the $20. I do appreciate that quite a bit. Seems a little delayed, because that thing passed $200 million a long time ago. All right, jump back into the chat. There was another Rumble rant as well. Hot Dog 990. Thank you very much for your $20. Another 20. Whoa. Dang, dude. Thank you. And since those are Rumble rants, YouTube don't get none of that. So it says, I've given up on Hollywood, been burnt one too many times. Bro, I get it. I get it. And you should. I mean, again, you should not be giving them your money. And they have not earned it at this point. Hollywood has consistently made so many mistakes, has just completely ignored their fans, ignored the audience to a very large degree. Obviously, there's exceptions. I think that Tom Cruise, for instance, is usually one to listen to what the people want, usually gives people a good, entertaining time on screen, whether it's Top Gun Maverick, even just from a year or two ago, right, with the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, that the title was terrible, the way they released it was terrible, and it didn't make much money, unfortunately, but the film was still really fun. And I'm looking forward to the final reckoning this coming summer. But it is honestly amazing that they continue to try to perpetuate this, and even more so, how the media is also so complicit, right? Sorry, I got some hair going on here. It's not mine. It's probably the wifey's. And so I think to the fact that the choices that have been made by the Hollywood machine, and the fact that they have a complicit media that backs them up, that tries to perpetuate the false narratives, that tries to perpetuate all of the nonsense. It's amazing that it's actually even taken this long. But if you also just, for a moment, just step back and think, wow, it was only last year that Deadpool and Wolverine was making well over $1 billion. It was only last year that even Moana 2 made over $1 billion. And then you jump to this year, especially from Disney's side, and especially the MCU side of it, and you think, wow, Captain Falcon, barely over $400 million, right? Just about $415 million there. You look to Thunderbolts, second worst opening weekend in the entire history of the MCU for their domestic releases. And yeah, the word of mouth on Thunderbolts is looking good. But as we've learned, even from a film that is not as big of a film, like not as big of a budget, not as big of a property and an IP as The Accountant 2, that film also had good word of mouth. Everyone I talked to, everyone I heard mention anything about the movie had nothing but praise, and yet it still dropped. Like, what, 60+% in week 2? And is projected to be a massive loss leader in, with an $80 million budget. So just because your film has good word of mouth, one, does not make the film good in the case of Thunderbolts, or two, does not mean that the film's actually going to make its money back. I think that some people have gotten very cocky because of what happened with Sinners. The same people that was just simping for that movie and are the same ones still in the comment section, whining, complaining anytime I bring up anything critical related to that movie as far as its overall box office projections. I think it's like, oh, wow. So for once, their word of mouth actually did something, and that's not often that happens. And so therefore they think, oh, that means any film with good word of mouth is automatically going to have great legs. That's just not how it works. That's just never been how it works. Good word of mouth is important, but your film is also important too. If you have good word of mouth, but your film's not really all that great, it's missing a piece of that puzzle. And I think that's the issue right now for Thunderbolts is, yeah, it's got good word of mouth, but it's also coming from an IP and from a studio that's burned, as again, someone just mentioned, right? Burned so many people so many times. And they have no reason to trust anything that the MCU does, anything that Disney does going forward. No reason to trust them at all. So, anyway, get back into the main chat. Thank you for those early Rumble rants. I do appreciate that. Kinky and Runchki, holy crap, time's flying. There it is. Snortapoopus Cuber. Hello, humans and other quitteth. What's going on with Snortapoopus? We got Wendy Hunter. Wendy saying, I have a terrible migraine and sadly won't be able to tune in. I do apologize. Hopefully you are feeling better. Get well soon. Gary Banjo Sandwich saying, The New Avengers is an okay film. No, it's not, Gary. That's where you and a bunch of the people on Critic List are completely wrong. It's a bad movie. I don't understand. I feel like we watched two very different movies. It's also interesting how oftentimes there's certain audiences that will be very critical when bad dads are portrayed, and yet there's nothing but bad dads in this, and people are just willing to kind of look past that. I don't get it. We got a member on the channel, one of my chosen of Valhalla, Raichu. Welcome back, Raichu. Welcome. Appreciate you. Carl Jacobs, a member. Hail to you. Jimmy A. Hail to you. Forever Sci-Fi. Hail to you. Jeremy Zakowski. Evening, Odin, and everybody. Good evening to you. Sahil99 hanging out in the chat. Icthulu, who is a member. What's going on? Good evening, Odin. Good evening to you. Thanatos Felicitas, thank you very much for tagging, saying hello to you. Welcome, welcome. Donald J. Skywalker, welcome to the channel. Gary Banjo tagging to say, OMB Guardian, how dare you? He stole my look. Michael Brigette tagging to say, hey, Odin, A24 dropped the trailer for the new Spike Lee Denzel film, Highest 2, Lowest today. It's a remake of the Kurosawa film High and Low, which was really good. Have you seen the Kurosawa film? I've not. I own High and Low. It's been on my list of things to watch. I think I've dragged my feet on that one a little bit because it's not the typical Kurosawa film that I just really enjoy. I love his take on traditional Japanese culture, his samurai films, right? Of course, I've seen his film Akiryu, so I know that he can do more modern stories. Again, modern for his time. Really, really good and really, really well. So it's definitely on my list. I don't really trust anything that Spike Lee does, though. I think Denzel Washington is a great actor. Spike Lee, he once TDS struck him, he just has never been the same. I go back to a really solid movie that he did called Black Klansman. And then all of a sudden, at the very end of his movie, it's like he took this just giant dump all over it and ruined the entire thing, ruined and colored the entire movie with this anti-Trump nonsense. You're just like, no, that's not why I went to go see your movie. Why are you trying to push politics in a story that has and should have nothing to do with this? And then, of course, like a film like following that one was all about a group of friends where one of them is treated poorly because he himself is a MAGA supporter. It's like, what? He's lost the plot. So I don't trust anything that Spike Lee does anymore. Caveat ties, what's going on? Kiki and Rumsky hanging out over on Green Machine saying, is there an interim pope right now? No. So there's only ever the pope, and that's it. There is currently Carlamingo. I probably mispronounced that a bit, but Carlamingo is a is a cardinal who has been put in charge to be a steward of the Vatican. So he's not in charge. He doesn't make any major pronouncements, can't change doctrine. Like, he can't do anything that a pope typically can. The only thing that he is there is really just to be a steward, to make sure that the funeral goes okay for the previous pope, to make sure that the conclave gets set up and everything. So that's his primary objective. So there is no interim pope, though. Some of the mainstream media have kind of been portraying it that way, but he's really has no actual authority in any way. Let's see. Caveat time to say they were talking smack about you on Monday Hangover. Of course they were. Because when you have a bad take on a movie, like many of the people on that panel do, by the way, that's all you can do is go after someone when they're not even there. He said sarcastically. As I'm doing the exact same thing. But no, I mean, again, if you've seen the film and you're honest with yourselves about the kind of movie that you got, you know it's not good. Gary Banjo saying, the Conclave DJ has another gig, so new pope soon. Interesting. All right. Caught up on the chats there, so now I get to pull up my main window like I usually do. Hello. Hello, everybody. Let's see. Let me catch up with everything in here. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Remember, if you have a comment or question, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. @Odin lets me know that you're trying to get my attention. Cthulhu, thank you again for letting me know. That sounds fine now. Had a lag spike issue, so I'm glad that has been fixed. Jimmy A says, do you think Disney will do drive-in double features with Thunderbolts Captain America to milk more money out of Captain America? Probably not, but it is interesting how they are pulling this whole marketing stunt of revealing that the asterisk was there to reveal a hidden subtitle. And this is something that is really not all that surprising because everyone knew, okay, clearly the asterisk is there for a reason. It's clearly a placeholder for something. And sure enough, oh, it was a placeholder for the new Avengers. And the cast is seen in a video recently unveiling that title. And it's just kind of silly because, for one, it's revealing, I guess, one of your big, quote, twists in your movie not long after your film has been released. But even more so, it just honestly makes you scratch your head that much more, because if you're calling them the new Avengers, and as someone who's not a comics person, again, I'm not a comics guy, I look at that and I think to myself, okay, why would the general normie audience that has been checked out of the MCU for a long time, basically since Endgame or not long after Endgame came out, why would I look at any of that and say, oh, that looks awesome, I can't wait to see these new Avengers? Because in my head, I think, oh, like the Avengers, like Iron Man and Thor and everybody from the first Avengers film back in 2012, but now they're the new Avengers? None of the people in that cast are on that level. I mean, David Harbour's recognizable, but that's because he's been in almost everything, it seems, right? He's the most broad-reaching, I guess, of the actors there. You could also argue Florence Pugh is of that level as well. She probably is well known by many because of her performance in films like Oppenheimer, for instance. But there's nothing about her or nothing about those actors or those characters that really makes you think, oh yeah, these are the future of the MCU. So the marketing stunt doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like, who is honestly going to be excited for that kind of reveal unless you're a simp for the film, of which there are several MCU stans and simps out there, it seems, or whether you're a part of the actual cast and crew that would actually have a good reason to be excited for such a thing, because it's like, whoa, we're now being put in the same sentence, the same breath of the Avengers. Now, again, I'm not saying that that's how it was in the comics, right? Obviously, I know there's probably some lore about new Avengers not being the Avengers or whatever it might be, right? Being more of a side character or side hustle type. I don't know. Again, I really don't know. But I could say that most audiences who've loved those films have likely not been a part of the comics heavy audience, and a lot of them have checked out. Now, it seems like this is being well received by the normies, because a lot of these people on critic lists are absolutely would put into that normie class. Looking at you, Blaine, especially. He's king of the normies, I would say, with some questionable takes on movies. He also defended the Minecraft film. But again, that's one that I know I'm probably a lot more in the minority there in our community. But it's amazing how split, regardless of your opinion on Thunderbolts, it's amazing how split everybody is on it. Doesn't change the fact it's not a good film and that it's going to lose money. But I digress. Abomination saying, I was holding out in case they caught some weird bank error and had to adjust down to the actual box office by $200 million. Also, I've gone for a few weeks and missed a lot of streams. Well, I appreciate you being here, Abomination, nonetheless. Thanks for hanging out on the Green Machine. Still obviously up on Rumble, still up on Odyssey, but we all know that Odyssey, unfortunately, has kind of just died in many ways. So I might be shutting down the Odyssey link in the future just because no one's really watching there anymore. I like to give people the alternatives, but at the same time, why waste the bandwidth if no one's really going to watch? So if you're watching on Odyssey and you like those streams, let me know. And but I could have told you that, Abomination. I mean, come on, man. Come on. You know there are enough people out there with bad takes on movies, looking at you, Blaine, that will spend money, looking at you, Blaine and crew, on those types of movies, and will push them to $400 million. Jimmy A., who is a member, hail to you, Jimmy A., saying, say what you will about Jason Statham, but he always gives the people what they want, mostly being him beating up people. Even when it doesn't work, he still tries. Agreed. Oh, completely. Like, I'm the first person, I tell you guys, right? I had no interest in watching the Meg 2. I thought it was ridiculous. I thought the first Meg was hilarious, was great, but it was exactly what it needed to be. A one-shot, stupid story about Jason Statham fighting a megalodon. Like, that's all you need. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's just go ahead and cash grab this real quick and make a really cheap sequel. I know people liked it. Obviously, King and Rumsky is one of the first persons that will tell you how much he loves the Meg 2. But yeah, even I would say, even though I was not the person to really be marketed for that movie, clearly he has a very dedicated audience, because whether it's the Megs, whether it is the Beekeeper, whether it is his more recent filming, A Working Man, right? I actually really liked A Working Man. Beekeeper, I thought was pretty solid too, a lot better than I expected it to be. It's clear that he has that audience. It's clear that he has a bit of the market kind of locked down in many ways. King and Remsky, tag to say, did you see President Trump going to tear foreign movies? Yeah, so I think there's been some misinformation about that. So shout out to Geeks and Gamers and everybody for kind of trying to keep things on the level. But basically, all that was said initially was that Trump was going to specifically tariff films made by American studios, whereby they were exporting their work to other countries to save money. That is what I've gathered from everything going on. So basically, Disney. So Disney saying, ooh, instead of making our movie here in America, we're going to go set up shop in the United Kingdom, make our movie there, spend all of our money there, and then import it back into the country. So he's not saying, to my knowledge, putting any type of taxation on foreign-made movies coming into America by foreign companies, right? It's more about American companies taking advantage of good financial deals, or again, some cases maybe slave labor, right? Taking advantage of those things and then importing them back into the country, which personally, it's like, I'm actually okay with stuff like that, because I do think that there does need to be a huge shift in where we make things. Now, to a less degree, do I care about Hollywood? Because it's like, look, those are major media companies. Obviously, it'd be better for them to make things here, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. I care much more about manufacturing, though. That's something that should be, done here, because that's just to our own national benefit. But I digress. Hot Dog 990 saying, the money I don't spend on Hollywood, I'd rather send to you, Outpost, Nerd, etc. Well, I appreciate that, man. I really do appreciate that. Thank you. We got Bruce hanging out in the chat. What's up, Bruce? Jimmy A. Honestly, I can't even think of a major blockbuster since Aquaman 2 that had good dads. Yeah, and that was the rare exception where you actually had a bad mom in many respects. But it's also not surprising because it was still a character played by Amber Heard. So, I mean, come on. Kind of wrote itself in many ways. Camerlingo. Yeah, again, I knew I was probably mispronouncing it. But yeah, Camerlingo is the name of the position, who is really a steward. It's almost like the steward of Gondor. Thanatos Felicitas saying, interim pope sounds like a master of ceremonies type deal. Yeah, that's why interim pope really isn't the correct nomenclature. Forever Sci-Fi, the new pope will be named Scotty, and he will come out to the song Scotty Doesn't Know. Well, that would be interesting, but not going to happen. No, popes have been choosing papal names for centuries now. The first one recorded was because the Pope's name was, I think, either Mercury or it was a derivative of Mercury. And the Pope who was chosen did not think it was proper for a vicar of Christ, for a Pope to be named after a Roman fake false deity. And so he therefore changed his name to the name of a previous Pope who was known for their holiness. And that tradition started and just got picked up from that point forward. And so that's why we have 23 Johns, I think is the most. We have a lot of Innocents. No, Pius. That's the one. Pius. We have all the way up to Pope Pius the 12th. And there's several other ones. Gregory got up to a pretty high number, I think. Benedict obviously got up to 16. So it'll be interesting. King and Rumsky, Odin should be called the wimpiest. It should be called the wimpiest Avengers. That's definitely a better name. Guy saying, what are the chances that Thunderbolts having a 50% or lower drop? Of having a strong hold based off of the weekend in front of us, not looking great. But we still don't know. We need to get the Sunday to Monday drop. We don't have those numbers yet. We need to see how it does in the weekly daily performances. If we see a massive Sunday to Monday, that sets a bad precedent for what the film likely will do in the long term, right? Notoriously, MCU films almost always drop 60% or more in their second weekend. There's obviously sometimes exceptions that can happen, but oftentimes it's going to have that drop because it's front-loaded. Most people who want to see it are going to see it opening weekend. Now, the reason why I would say as of right now, since we don't really have the data we need to make that kind of projection, is because all that we do have available is what were the initial projections and where did the film end up. And I guess that would make it a good time for us to kind of go into some of these numbers in a much more official capacity, because there is a lot to unpack, especially with the actuals from this past weekend being brought up. So, obviously, we are about to go into some numbers, and so make sure you step back, pay attention, and enjoy the show.
Time to see a real math magician at work!
That's right, it's now to see a real math magician at work with some math. So let's go ahead and just look at the box office for Thunderbolts. And so as you can see, $160.5 million is what the film has made in its international global opening weekend. Now, if you were paying attention to my box office breakdown yesterday, by the way, thank you. Pretty successful video overall, especially compared to previous box office breakdowns. So one of the things we can say is that, hey, Thunderbolts might be, and the MCU might bring some terrible films out there. The MCU stands back, but you know what? Usually it helps also with some of those view counts as well. Though, of course, again, I did this for fun, and so those really don't matter. However, that $160 million is a bit different than what the initial estimates were for this movie. You may have actually seen that chart just update in real time as Box Office Mojo has finally also caught up. So the film initially was reported to have opened to $162 million worldwide and a domestic opening of originally $76 million. That, however, has since been adjusted down to 74.3. Now, a couple of things need to be noted here. First, it is completely normal for movies to make less than what the initial estimates were. Sometimes films will make a little bit more, sometimes films will make a little bit less, and sometimes they're actually pretty spot on, right, with almost no change whatsoever. But it is a common thing to see. That being said, the fact still remains that this film was tracking to a certain level, to a certain degree. Because of its performance, it got upticked a little bit. However, once the actuals came out, turns out what they thought the film was going to do, $76 million, was a bit higher than what the film actually had the capacity for. And so it's because of that. Again, that's all we have currently in front of us. It's the only data we really have to go off of, right? Some people could potentially go into the daily numbers and say, okay, it dropped 22% and then 28% on both its Saturday and Sunday respectively, and then compare that and look at those drops compared to some of the other MCU films. However, I go based off of those initial projections from the likes of from the likes of Deadline, because it usually, to me, shows you a bit more about where the mainstream media is. The mainstream media has a very clear bias, right? If you've never figured that out at this point, I don't know how else to help you, right? The bias of the media has always been very clear. With that being said, though, it is easier for us to actually see that narrative as it's being woven and also be able to poke holes in the narrative as well, because they're always very much on the surface with their feelings and with their emotions. So the fact that they were going in saying 76 million and it only made 74 makes it much easier for us to point out, hey, guess what? That's not a good sign. Where you're making less than where your tracking is going, right? So usually those projections, right? How do they get to that $76 million number? Because it's, hey, here's the numbers that were reported for Friday. Here's what most films of this variety, of this genre in, history have seen as far as their day 1 to day 2 drop-offs. Here's where our early reporting of the early Saturday numbers has come in. Here's what's being projected to be made on that Sunday. Those are the kinds of things that get brought up. And that usually leads to their, leading to certain projections. But in this case, they overprojected, meaning that what they saw was something stronger, or rather what they saw was something that ended up being weaker than what they actually got. Now, of course, they're going to continue to play coverage for it by saying here, so what exactly did that asterisk mean after all the, all that in the Thunderbolt title? Today, Marvel finally answered the question on its social media handles, as well as in a top market outdoor ads. That asterisk denotes the movie subtitle, The New Avengers, which this ragtag group of Winter Soldier, Ghost, John Walker, Alexei Shostakov, and Yelena Belova represents. They're all expected to segue to Joe and Anthony Russo's Avengers Doomsday, which will fire off next summer, May 1st, 2026. And the only reason why that film has a chance of being a financial success, or at the very least being $1 billion film, is because of nostalgia and member berries. That's the only thing that film has going for it, because it's not going to be because of these guys. We hear from Disney that the studio didn't technically retitle Thunderbolts. That would be crazy. Sure. Rather just spelled out that asterisk. The last-minute marketing stunt, glad that you're being honest there, comes in the wake of Thunderbolts opening to $74 million instead of the reported $76 million. After an estimated $18 million Sunday, 27% from Saturday's 24.5. Disney will be reporting their official figures soon. The Jake Schreier-directed movie had great exits with an A- cinema score. Cinema score is garbage. 94% Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Rotten Tomatoes is completely broken. And at least this one I do trust typically more often. ComScore Green, a Screen Engine, exits of 71% definite recommend and 4.5 stars. Based off of that, Disney is hoping for a second weekend hold that improves upon previous less than $100 million openers. Eternals dropped 62%, had a B cinema score, 164 million, and Captain America Brave New World had an 88 million opening and dropped 68%, plummeted, and that was a B- cinema score with a $200 million domestic final. Now again, he's using metrics that I think are quite broken, and so therefore are not worth really mentioning in that degree, but it must be said that $88.8 million, guess what? That's a lot better than what Thunderbolts ended up doing. If you missed my box office breakdown for this past weekend, what I pointed out was with these new numbers especially, that means on estimate, with, again, assuming the average ticket that's being bought, the average ticket price of the tickets being bought specifically for Thunderbolts this past weekend was $14, which is on the low side, because remember, most of the films, or most of the tickets, or a huge portion at least of these tickets that are being sold to Thunderbolts are IMAX tickets, are 3D tickets, are premium format screen tickets. So much higher than your average ticket price. So we're talking about probably closer to maybe $16 to even $20 average ticket price when you take all of those into account. So this is a very small audience that is going to see this. And so the issue is that even if you do have strong exit tickets, as it said, 71% definite recommend. Okay, that means about what? 3/4 of your audience, a little less than 3/4 of your audience, say it's a definite recommend. Who are they going to be recommending this to? Either friends of theirs that were maybe already there with them or already planning to see it their second weekend, or to possibly some burnt out MCU fans who are going to hear that and say, yeah, you may have said that last time. These might be the same people that said, oh yeah, Captain America Brave New World was great. People were then convinced to go to the theater and then say, oh, wait a minute, no, it's not. Again, we don't really know what is made up of this audience, because the issue with post-track, the issue with CinemaScore, we don't get any actual data a lot of the time. Post-track gives us a little bit more information about them, but we usually don't know what kind of person they are, where they're coming from, what their market is like, what their own interests are, their own biases, whatever it might be, right? So it's because, though, that you have good word of mouth, I do think it's going to therefore do better down the line than a Brave New World. Might actually even be able to match or even exceed the domestic, at least, of Brave New World because of that. It might hold well, right? Brave New World dropped 68%, one of the largest drops for the MCU films in their history. But you're still talking about a movie that's probably going to at least drop, if I had to guess, between 55 and 60%. Now, if it hits 55%, that's better by a long shot than a lot of your more recent films, but it's still quite a drop nonetheless. It still may not be enough to drive that score up, to drive that box office up to the number that it needs to be in order to actually break even. If it instead drops 60% or more, that's your typical MCU fare, and that means that we can expect a typical MCU run. And recently, what does that look like? It's exactly what we got with Brave New World, 415-ish million worldwide numbers, and because of its massive budget, huge financial losses. The one benefit at this point is that Thunderbolts reportedly has a $180 million budget that we all know. The media still runs with this farce that Brave New World only cost $180 million, and so how much Thunderbolts actually costs, we may never know, because I don't think the film was shot in the United Kingdom. If it was, we'd probably get some more information about it and actually get some, some transparency there. But because I don't think it was, Disney is going to hold those numbers close to the chest and probably never get them revealed. But even with that number, we're still talking about a movie that is not looking good. The prospects of which are not looking good at all, as far as what the film is likely going to be making by the end of its run, which basically is nothing. As of right now, the film, because of its massive budget, is around $194.6 million in the red. You heard that number correctly. Based off of where it is right now. Remember, most films tend to make around 3 times their budget by the end of their second weekend. So doing some quick math on that, that would bring it to around, on average, right? If this film does indeed have an average run. Sorry, my mouse is dying. It's like, why? Why at this very moment have you decided to give up on me? How dare you? How dare you, my friend? Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Apologies, give me a second. Give me a moment. Of course, it doesn't help that it's a micro USB cable. My goodness. It's one of the benefits if you have a just regular standard old plug and play mouse. But it is nice not having a cable attached to it. Okay, anyway, back to it. So an average run from this point, if we see your typical MCU fare, if we see everything normal happening from this point forward, based on the numbers from this weekend and how off they were from their original projections, has a chance of happening here. $480 million would be the cap of the film, right? That's more than the $415 million that was made by the likes of Brave New World, but that's still a far cry from where you need to get to break even, because at $180 million in today's market, you need to make $540 million to break even. You need to make roughly 3 times your budget to actually make your money back, which is why, even though $160 million sounds like a lot of money, when you compare it to your budget and how much money you actually get back, that's still around almost $200 million in the red. Now, as I said, this film is going to leg out a little bit. But for the people thinking this film is going to leg out a lot, I don't know exactly what it is you're thinking. Maybe you're looking at sites like over on Criticlist, where 67 votes indicate this film is a, quote, rad movie. The issue I have, of course, is that if you go into these reviews, what you find are a lot of bloated scores in various directions, right? The decents, I think, are probably the most on the money, objectively speaking. The rads, I think, are being way too generous with it. And some of the heinouses and some of the boguses, I think, are also being a bit too harsh. Whereas Parks and Rec has a 17% heinous score, which I think is absolutely fair. A 7% score from Akira O Entertainment, I think that's a little bit too harsh. A little bit too harsh. However, I would also say that The Bachelor in Black at 95% is insane for thinking such a thing. That the 91% and 80% ratings are insane. 85%, absolutely bonkers crazy. Basket City, 5%, I think that's a little too harsh. I think that might be a little too harsh. Whoever this dude is, American Hero, gave it a 100%. I'm sorry. I barely have any 100% movies these days. In fact, if I had control over anything, it would be you can't give a 100% score to a movie unless you really mean it. Because if you're trying to say that this is a perfect movie, get out of here. Nonsense. But these are the kinds of scores that we have. We have some that are overhyping it by a large degree. There are some that are underhyping it by a large degree. And then you have others like Vex Electronica, who I think is spot on here with a 20% bogus score, saying here, Thunderbolts is basically the leftover crockpot stew of random Marvel characters turned mercenaries that finds themselves on the run after being tasked by the CIA's director to cover up a morally questionable human experimentation project. I'm trying to understand some of the praise around the film, and this film can legitimately only receive positive praise if you completely shut off your brain, have lowered your standards to match the lower quality of entertainment we've got in the last decade, or keep framing Thunderbolts as, well, it's better than Thor 4, the Marvels, etc. at least. This is a safe slop, plain and simple, just like how Captain America 4 was a safe slop. And the most interesting parts, if we can call them that, were all featured in the trailers. Spot on from Vex Electronica. The issue that we have in front of us is that the standards that we have set for ourselves and for our movies has now dropped to such an insane degree that we are actually willing, some of us in our community at least, are willing to try to argue that Thunderbolts is actually a good movie. This almost reminds me a bit about the conversation surrounding other mid to just not great films that people ended up praising quite a bit. I think back to the Tomorrow War, for instance, which got random praise because people wanted to give Chris Pratt a bone, because people wanted to give Chris Pratt a lot of praise because he's Chris Pratt. And he doesn't come across as your typical Hollywood shill, your typical Hollywood person. The issue is that means that you yourself are trying to prop up a film that really isn't all that good. Now, remember, subjectively, people can enjoy whatever films they want. I have no ownership of whether you can enjoy a movie. But when you go off and try to make instead the argument that the film is somehow good, now you've crossed the line. Now you've gone into now you're claiming objective reality and truth when there is none to be had. That I do take issue with, and that, of course, will continue to call out. So, where do you stand on this issue? Do you stand in the real world where this movie ultimately is, again, mid at best? I can't imagine that anyone 10 years from now is going to say, man, Thunderbolts is such a good film, and oh my gosh, like, I can't believe it's in my top 5 all-time favorite MCU. No. Remember when the Marvels came out, and you had all of those, back in the day when we had even more, like, actually, like, professional Marvel shills? We're thinking about, like, the John Campias of the world and the others where they got paid access to go see their films and to give these very lofty reviews of their films, right? And they sold their credibility down the drain, right? You remember those days? I remember those days, right? And ultimately, it all ended up being this Ponzi scheme of nonsense, right? But the films were still bad. But because we've now lowered our standards so much, because we've been beaten down so much, if there's even just the smallest glimmer of legitimacy, we immediately put it on a pedestal. And it's like, no. Just because something is not as bad as something else does not make it good. Period. And stop. What say you? Caveat Ties at 749 said, do you think Thunderbolts will make at least $350 million worldwide so Matt makes some money? Matt makes some money. I'm missing context there on that one. I do think, based off of its current tracking, it's going to make about as much. I do think it will make about as much as Captain America 4, and has a good chance of making more. Because, as I said, I'm not going to deny reality. The word of mouth on this movie is good. I don't know why. Just because you have good word of mouth does not mean that the film itself is actually good. It just means you have a lot of people who are like, man, finally have something that I don't completely hate, and so therefore I must kind of like it, and so because I kind of like it, I have to support it, and I have to tell it and scream it from the rooftop saying, this movie didn't suck. And it's like, whoa, okay. Just because something doesn't suck doesn't mean that it's good. And also, come on. There's a lot of this movie that we can say kind of sucks. I mean, come on. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, please. Jimmy A. Calling the Thunderbolts the new Avengers reminds me of the We Have at Home meme. We have the Avengers at home, the new Avengers Thunderbolts. I don't know that meme, actually. Abomination of Odyssey is also 50 seconds behind Rumble for some reason. Interesting. Icthulu. Hold on one second. Willow? No. Sorry. One of my dogs has allergies. JS Pena. Ahoy, ahoy to you, JS Pena. We got the man with the orange hat saying, dropping in to leave a like. Sorry I cannot mod. My time is now dedicated to my brother's youngsters. Well, I hope that things are going well. Is that just for today or is that like for all time? Keegan Rumsky at 752 saying, did I hear Meg 2 or was I just dreaming a beautiful dream? I think you were dreaming of the Meg 3, actually. Southeastern Kaiju, what is going on? Welcome. Oh boy. Not the whole Toho talk again. King Kane and Rumsky laughing. Jimmy A. If Trump's movie tariff comes in place, Tom Cruise will be punching the air. Mission Impossible would cost $800 million at that point. Well, here's the thing is I don't think they'd be retroactive. So because that movie has already been made, I don't think that you would have that spend. Again, I have not read the order. I imagine it's going to get challenged. I imagine there's going to be some variation of it that comes forward at some point. But Guy saying, won't this affect movies that want to shoot on location? Movies like Mission Impossible 8 and The Odyssey like to shoot on location, not a lot of CGI. It depends. Again, I don't know what the language of the order is. But to my knowledge, the general understanding is movies that are moving parts of their studio to other countries to film on sound stages, which you can do in the United States. So it's one thing if you're shooting on location. I imagine if you're shooting on location because your film demands it, you're not going to have to worry about that kind of a tax. You're not going to have to worry about that kind of a tariff. I think it's more so trying to stop Hollywood companies from extraditing and rather exporting workers to save a quick buck on things that you could easily do here in the United States. Again, I'm thinking specifically of Marvel. I'm thinking specifically of the MCU, where most of it is them shooting on the volume, shooting on CGI and green screen and just sound stages, which you, again, could easily do here in the United States instead. And if that's what's going on, I think that would be, again, I understand where that's coming from. Jess Pena. I saw Thunderbolts over the weekend with my dad. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would, but if I were watching it again, it would probably be for background noise. That's a great point, right? Just because the film you don't hate, that doesn't make it good. I think that's a great way that you just described it, saying, hey, I didn't hate it, but I also didn't like it either. I probably wouldn't actually want to watch it again. I think that's where most people probably will feel once their heads, get out of their rear ends. Sacre Bleu, the deadly poke of Zorro, saying, hello, Odin. LOL, the reveal of the secret alternate trailer for Thunderbolts reminds me of GOB's lame magic show idea from Arrested Development, where he reveals the secret magician. Ah, yes. Hey, clearly, wait a second. Did they make Thunderbolts with no diversity in the cast? Huh? How? Well, when you make your female members strong women, and you make your white men all bad husbands or just very beta personalities, then guess what? You can get away with it. Notice how you didn't have a smart and competent white male amongst the group. That's how they got away with it. So, also, I think you could argue that the actress that plays Ghost is mixed. I don't know, actually. Let's see. Jace Pena. Oh, wait. He might actually say this. Jace Pena is saying, well, Ghost is a gender-swapped villain who is half black and British. Well, there you go. Again, I thought that her character, that actress was mixed in some way. Harwick saying, regarding movies that change titles at the end, John Carter 2012 has the title John Carter at the beginning, then at the end has a title screen saying John Carter of Mars. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, and it's been so long since I've watched it. I think that was less so a title card at the end and more of just, again, I don't think that was them trying to change the title of the movie. I think that was meant to be more of like an homage to the original novel, which is a very different thing. The title changes that we can think of more recently is, for instance, if you remember Birds of Prey and the the wacky emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Oh my gosh, I used to know the name of that. It's so bad. So cringe. Oh, the Fantabulous. That's what it was. The Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Such a mouthful. And then what happened? They actually changed the movie's title to just Birds of Prey. And at the time, I was like, you know what? It's a good change. It's a good change. Jimmy A. Marvel has become like Will Smith. Still trying to put out hits like the good old days and pretending like nothing happened. Yep. Hardwick, there are now less than 20 days left until Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning releases, and of every action blockbuster movie this year, it's the one I'm most optimistic for. I'm definitely looking forward to it myself. Jimmy A. Now that we're talking about movie quality, I will out myself as an unironic Morbius enjoyer. Yes, that's why we say, if we are at least willing to admit, with Morbius as the example, that it's a crap movie, but you enjoy it, I got no problem with you. I got no beef. The beef comes in when you say, oh, Morbius is actually a pretty good film. No, it's not. Let's see. Abomination saying, I'm starved for good movies, which is why I've been building my collection of old movies, but will never see Vacation 2014 as a good or even tolerable movie. RV was a better vacation movie than that trash. Highly recommend against. I never had any interest in seeing it. The trailers drove me away from it. Caveat Ty saying, Matt bought Thunderbolts for $350 million on Box Office Tycoon's critical. Gotcha. Yeah, every time I've tried to go into there, I just get a little bit too confused. Jez Pena, not relevant, but I'm curious, where did you get that bookshelf? Oh, well, thank you, Jez Pena. If you mean this one right here, like the one that's actually holding the books, that one I got off of Amazon, I believe. If you just look up like modern bookshelf or like low space bookshelf or vertical bookshelf, you should find one of a similar brand, similar quality. I forget exactly what brand it was, but I liked it because it didn't take up a lot of horizontal space. King Ramsey saying, I think women dig the Thunderbolts because they dig feels and therapy. Am I right? Might explain why some of the guys are enjoying it too. Might explain that. So you've been to therapy. Cthulhu, there's people who think Buckaroo Banzai was a perfect movie. Humans will human. Arguing opinion is like wrestling with a pig. The pig doesn't care and you only look silly. Again, depends on whether you're arguing opinion or not. Again, if you are rating a film at a 100% rating, you are saying not only that you enjoy the movie, you're saying it's a perfect movie. And even I, as someone who loves films like 12 Angry Men, who loves films like Casablanca, will not say that those are perfect movies. Casablanca, great example. There's a sequence where they are driving through the countryside. It's a flashback, and it's the most cringeworthy stuff I've ever seen. Because the background is completely fake. It ends up shifting different locations as they're driving. You have got, your man Humphrey Bogart just smiling that cheesy smile. That's my least favorite part of the movie. And yet, it's my favorite, or one of my favorite films of all time. So a film that I would consider to be perfect for me is still objectively flawed. So no, you absolutely can have that discussion. The problem is people don't know how to talk about objective qualities versus subjective opinion. Kitty Chow hanging out, saying good evening from Huntsville. Hello. Hardwick, how far have you gotten in watching the original Star Trek? Haven't watched anything since the last time you asked, dude. Have not had time. Summertime's coming up, though, so I'll be able to jump back in. Luke Zilla, hail to you. Kitty Chow, how are you? Thor, Freya, babysit doing? All doing well. Weekend was good. And is it true that no one has ever survived the 4-post massacre? I don't understand that last reference. Abomination saying, Madam Web is greater than Morbius. I think they're both garbage, but I appreciate the fact that people do think that they're funny for some reason. Guy, have you seen The Last of Us? You mean the series adaptation? Yeah, season 1 was terrible. Season 2, I am, 2 episodes in? Yeah, I got all the way up to and through the beating of Joel, and it's just as stupid in the show as it was in the actual video game. The one positive praise that I will give to the show, the raid, oh my goodness, very well done. Very, very well done. Had they not ended it and decided, there's certain times when you don't respect source material, and one of those times is you don't follow the same story that Last of Us Part 2 did in the video games. I mean, you do realize that that decision, amongst many others, makes Part 2 one of the most hated games, especially amongst your fans of the original series. Of course, it's got its fans because people got to defend it, right? And hey, at least the show doesn't have a unrealistically jacked Abby, at least you're like, oh, that actress actually makes sense. In fact, I think the actress that plays Abby in the show was actually in the live action adaptation. I say adaptation, but the film version of Dear Evan Hansen. I think that she played the love interest in that. So I actually like her as an actress. Jimmy A. I think women dig the Thunderbolts because of Sebastian Stan. The ladies love Bucky. Imagine if, Bucky was actually the real leader of the film and was featured prominently throughout the movie instead of one of the female characters. Just going to put that out there. Beta guys digging it too. Can't remember. So reference Ready to Rumble. Oh man, it's been so long since I've seen Ready to Rumble. Appreciate the update to that. Caveat ties to say, what is a perfect movie or the closest to it for me, Amadeus? That's pretty good. Again, for me, Casablanca. More so 12 Angry Men. 12 Angry Men is pretty darn close. But any film, even if you think it's perfect, even if you love it, there's always going to be something you find in the movie that's like, man, you know what? They could have fixed this. Justin C. Hey, Hot Fuzz feels like a perfect film to me. I would agree. It's very well done. Another film that hits me like that is more recently, in the past like 10, oh man, actually, is that film 11 years old now? Whiplash. Did that come out in 2014? I think it might have. Whiplash. Talk about a great film. The editing of that movie alone, the way that it matches the songs and the rhythm, everything, the ending. I want to watch Whiplash again. I love that film. But again, I can nitpick. I can find issues because it's not perfect. Abomination, a great example of a movie that's conceptually great and competently put together, but different reasons reduce the quality so it's not a perfect movie, is Space Truckers. They had a ton of cool things in the movie and the characters draw you in, but the technical limitations are very noticeable. I've actually never seen Space Truckers. I actually would think of Tron. People love Tron, and yet, I'm sorry, those effects are just so distracting. The Morak, Mission Impossible 1996 was an hour and 50 minutes. Mission Impossible Last Reckoning is 2 hours and 49 minutes. Movie runtime inflation. Yeah, it used to be that like some of the greatest films of all time were long, but they had every reason to be. Now it's almost like they try to make the films longer for whatever reason. It's also economically silly and stupid. Because if you have a longer movie, you have less show times. If you have less show times, you have less ability to make more money because your film can't be shown as many times in a day. I'm actually amazed that Hollywood doesn't pump out more 90-minute garbage films. But at the same time, I'm also not surprised because Hollywood's so full of itself. They think that they can just put these films out for 2 hours and 50 minutes and people are going to like them. Now, in the case of Last Reckoning and the Mission Impossible franchise, I don't mind that as much because action films, if they're really well made, and I'm hoping this one will be, could work. But yeah, I definitely feel that. Harvey Betho says, what do you think of the fact that they cast Caitlin Dever, who is tiny and 5'2" tall, as Abby? It seems like they were trying to distance her as much as possible from the game version. That might be the case, but they still decided to go through with the whole nonsense storyline anyway. I think it was definitely portrayed better in the show than in the game. It seems a bit more realistic, I guess you could say. But still, it's just as bad of a decision. And I know, again, we would expect most shows and movies to follow source material, etc. But that's a great example of one where you're like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't follow that source material because it kind of destroyed that franchise. Jimmy A, kind of odd how Kraven the Hunter went under the radar while Madam Web and Morbius got clowned on. Just interesting how that happened. Not when you realize that Kraven the Hunter is kind of a nothing burger. Like, Madam Web is notoriously bad. Morbius is horrendously bad. Whereas Kraven, you're just like, it's not good, but it's not complete trash either. It kind of fits into the discussion that we're having right now when it comes to Thunderbolts. I think a lot of people are confusing, oh, it wasn't terrible with, oh, I liked it. It's like, no, those two things are very, very different. Let's see, Jimmy A. So it sounds like the men in Thunderbolts are beta males. Yes. Yes, they are. Now, again, I would argue that they're bad dads. I think actually the best argument to make is, oh, wow, Talk about those bad dads, right? The fact that the trauma of them, their past, they have to. That's the other thing too, right? I'm sorry. How can you say that an MCU Marvel film that deals with mental illness and your feelings and therapy? By the way, therapy is a beautiful thing. Does a lot of help for a lot of people. Who in the hell puts that in a Marvel film? Who honestly says, oh, what do I want to see in my Marvel? I want to see people talk about their emotions and their trauma and all the difficulties that they go through and to see how, like, oh man, John Walker is like such a bad dad and he has to go through that and find some type of redemption. It's like, what? And then the redemption arc's just not even done well. Fantasia was perfect. Again, there's no such thing as a perfect movie. Not saying it's not great. Not saying there's a lot of things you could praise, but there's always something. Caveat ties, the actress who plays Abby should have played Ellie. I think it's a great shout. Arnold Hay, let's see, says, howdy, my friend. Howdy, my friend. So with all these tariffs that's gone be given to Hollywood 100%, do you think Avengers Doomsday will for sure delay? How do you think Hollywood will react to this? Honestly, I don't know. Because that's the biggest problem, is that there's so much uncertainty. Yes, an executive order has been signed, right? But it's going to get challenged in court. It's probably going to get delayed in its implementation. And so they're going to be unsure. Now, a lot of these things I think are already being done. I mean, Avengers Doomsday has already started filming, I believe. So my guess is that they're just going to keep going forward. The question is going to be basically, at what point does one have to pay? Because, again, you can't just retroactively charge tariffs. At least, again, very little reason do I think that you'd be able to do that. So the question would really be is, okay, when does it go into effect? Which movies does it affect? Again, I have not read the order myself. Let's see. Arnold Hay. Oh, sorry. Chat jumped on me. Justin C. Yes, Whiplash released in 2014. Dang. Wow. 11 years. Holy crap. I was working. Was I working at an AMC at that time? I think I was. Yes, I was. I just started. I wasn't too long removed from starting there, actually, because I remember we had gotten the movie and it was about to leave theaters and I didn't have a chance to watch it. And I was able to ask one of the managers, hey, I wasn't able to see this. Could maybe we do a screening of it? And I was like the only one in there. It was so cool. Man, I love that movie. All right, hold on. I got a super chat to get to. So, John Hugh, what's going on? Thank you very much for the $7.42 super chat, saying one of two. The at-home meme is from a trope, i.e. family drives by Baskin Robbins. Kid, mom, can we get ice cream? Mom, we have ice cream at home. Ah, gotcha. John Hu then says 2 of 2 for another $7.42. That's a super chat. Thunderbolts fans, can we give the Avengers Disney's Marvel? We have Avengers at home. That's a great comparison. Thank you for the explanation. Makes a lot more sense now. Yeah, it's discount Avengers. As I like to say, we have a book in our house that little Thor reads, and it's I Am a Sith. He's got I Am a Sith, I Am a Pilot, right? It's these little golden books, right? So kids' stories, but it's adaptations of Star Wars, adaptations of other things. And unfortunately, the one bad part about them is that it does feature some of the sequel trilogy people. However, my way around it has been basically to just throw shade at them while we're reading it. And as, you know, he's forward, he's not going to really get it necessarily. So there's one in I Am a Sith, though, where it gets to a page and they're showing, an image of Kylo Ren. And so when he was really little, when he asked, like, what's that? I said, oh, that's discount Darth Vader. And that's how he learned it. He just started calling him discount Darth Vader every time that we got to that page. Been a long, like, there was a span where we went through many other books. He went through this massive Godzilla phase amongst many others. By the way, he's finally into Pokemon, and I'm just, so proud. And so we went back to it more recently, though, And so he needed that reminder of the character, and he still, again, knows him as Discount Darth Vader. Anyway, that I think is, yeah. Thank you for the super chat, man. And I appreciate you. Let's see. Hardwick, back at 827. Caitlin Dever was also in No One Will Save You. Didn't see it. A Hulu movie about a young woman fending off aliens in her house. I liked up until the end, which I didn't care for. Gotcha. Arnold, hey, just shows how desperate Marvel, Disney are to change Thunderbolts' title to New Avengers and spoil the movie. Yeah, basically. Like, again, why would you do that at the tail end of your opening weekend? Unless you looked at those numbers and said, ooh, those aren't as good as we were hoping they'd be. Let's see if this works. And guess what? It's not going to. Jimmy A. One way Venom Let There Be Carnage made money was being 90 minutes and getting numerous showtimes a day. Agreed. Not to mention, it's a bad movie, but it is fun. That's a great example of what I was saying earlier, right? That's a movie where I went to go see it, and the whole time I'm looking around being like, man, this movie's awful, but everyone around me is laughing. Okay, guess I'll join them. So, Keegan Rumsky, after your discussion of movie runtime lengths compared to money made on a movie, you may need to do the math meme again. Oh boy. Arnold, hey, with Trump new tariff plan, DC Hollywood freaking out and will change their agenda completely? No. When they've lost, here's the thing, guys. When Hollywood's already lost hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, especially Disney, especially these massive studios, they've already lost countless hundreds of millions of dollars. And none of that's changed them. None of the flops, none of the things, right? There's claims of change happening because of a new president, because of financial results. But we really haven't ever seen it. Anyone who thinks that Thunderbolts is a sign that things are going in the right direction, I'm sorry. What have you been doing the last few years? How in the world can you buy the nonsense that's being sold to you? Because at the end of the day, all that Thunderbolts is yet another failed attempt to bring audiences back with false promises when the very basic framework of your story is inherently flawed. People say, oh, it's not woke. It's like, okay, but what do we even mean by that word? Because it does deal with intersectional feminists to a large degree. It does still feature girl bosses. Features all the things that we were also critical of things like Star Wars with, amongst many others. But for some reason, people like to give other things passes. I don't get it. Jimmy A. May Thunderbolts needed Ben Shapiro in it to tell everyone facts don't care about your feelings, pretty much. Nation, isn't the reason movies are longer now because they don't have scarcity of film? I think a lot of people said the movies were shortened because they would run out of film, so they scrap ideas together, then get the perfect take. Also, why movies have a quirk like Star Wars Stormtrooper bonks his head. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said for that because people had to spend a lot more money on, actual film back in the day. It used to be very expensive to do so. So to save money, you would be very cost effective with your takes because once your take is there, that film can't be brought back, right? And I do think in modern times, it's actually led to some pretty good things. Like one of my favorite films of last year, Strange Darling, shot on film. And part of that was, hey, it's catching these raw performances. And when an actor knows, ooh, I really got to get this right the first time because I may not get a second or third time, that changes that whole dynamic quite a bit. So I definitely think that there's a part of it. But I think it's also the fact that we just don't have as good movies anymore. People are trying to fill the time. There's a real big attempt to fill the time for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's also in the case of these big budget films, maybe, again, I've never really counted, but maybe it's because they're trying to get as much product placement in their films as possible. Usually there's a ton of it. Carl Jacobs, is there an OMB group on Critic List I might be able to join? Yes, I do have one for the channel. If you just type in OMB, you should find it there. I also do have a general box office group. Maybe that's the same thing. But yeah, I don't post there as much because it's very hard to post in different locations, especially during the school year. Oh, hey, is the way Sinners is tracking, do you still see it having very low percentage drop for weeks 3 and so forth? Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no reason, based off of the fact that week 2 dropped 5%, and now this past weekend it only dropped 28%. And let's see what the actuals indicated on that one, because it could have been better or worse. Yeah, still, even with the actuals, only 28% drop in week 3. That's really good. So yeah, this film is going to go the distance. It's going to make as much money as it wants to make at this point. Now, again, it's not going to go crazy, and it's not going to make crazy amounts of profit either, net profit, theatrically. Not talking about VOD sales yet. Not talking about Blu-ray 4K sales. It's going to make bank there, I bet. But theatrically, it's not going to be the biggest money maker in the world, right? And it's because of how much money the budget was. It's still going to make a pretty decent amount of money, though, right? $50 to $100 million of net profit, still nothing to shrug at. Especially if it gets closer to that $100 million range. Oh, hey, does your students or anyone you know think you look like one of the Thunderbolt characters, the one with the long beard? Yeah, I mean, people say for students, anyone who's bald with a beard, automatically I look like them. It's kind of how it goes. Saudi Kaiju, oh, and I'm telling little Thor that discount Darth Vader. That's discount Darth Vader. Gatekeeper, member for 10 months. Thank you for being a member for 10 months, Gatekeeper. Appreciate you. Abomination, hope Baby Thor doesn't watch Spaceballs and accidentally call Dark Helmet discount Darth Vader. It'll be a long time before he watches that movie, okay? Hardwig, was the Red Guardian the worst part of Thunderbolts? I wouldn't say he's the worst part, but it's just not funny. Like, oh, look at me. I have a fake Russian accent and I'm making Russian sounds. Aren't I so funny? It's not even that it's bad. It's just not funny. Like David Harbour, to David Harbour's credit, he is a talented actor. And so that's why there is something likable about him in almost all the things he does. That doesn't make it funny. That doesn't make it laugh out loud. Like one of the mid-credit sequences is him like being like, Wheaties! We're on the Wheaties box. Like, what? What? How? Why is this funny? It's lowest common denominator type humor. Let's see. Jimmy A. I really like fun bad movies. Expendables being an example. Yeah. And the fact that you're able to word it that way, I respect you. And I respect that take. Because you just said, bad movie. Fun bad movie. And if that's what people were saying, if people were saying Thunderbolts is a fun bad movie, I'd respect that. But that's not really what's being said. Like, one of the things I especially like at Critic List now is that there is literally a place for you to put entertainment value. That's where you put in that subjective. That's where you say, man, this film is fun for you. I, of course, will put in, not so much. All those other areas, though, in the general score, again, I think was meant more so to be an objective take, or at least the closest to objective that one could ever hope to get. But it seems instead that we're getting a bit of the opposite. Latest review from Live Long and Believe, 57% decent. So it's still stuck at 60% rad. Hope that it gets driven down back into the decent territory because, I mean, again, I don't like people driving it one way or the other. I think Blaine gave it an 83%. Are you insane? Bruh. Are you insane? I love you, Blaine. But 83%? You're crazy. You are crazy, good sir. So crazy. So crazy. Let me see if I can find something comparable. So an 82, 83% there. Also strongly disagree with your take on The King of Kings. It was not that good of a film, dude. Might be enjoyable for a... might be enjoyable for a kid, single digits, but that's about it. Bro, okay. Here's all you need to know about Blaine's scoring. He gave the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film an 80% most excellent score. He gave Thunderbolts a higher score than TMNT, live action. I rest my case. Blaine, for this great crime of saying that Thunderbolts is somehow a better movie than TMNT, I have to. You've left me no choice, Blaine.
You leave me no choice but to declare you excommunicado.
You have been declared excommunicado. Blaine is forever, from this point forward, Blaine is excommunicado. That's the other scene I need to find. Great film called Beckett. And there's an excommunication scene. And it's beautiful. Beautiful. Deeple101, thanks for subscribing. And thank you for the $2 super chat saying, finally able to catch a stream and resub. Well, Deeple101, thanks for being here. I don't think I've ever seen you in the chat, so thank you for your super chat and for your support. I appreciate it. Jimmy, hey, I haven't seen the excommunicado for a while. I've missed it. I know, I haven't declared so an excommunicado in a long time, but you know what? There's a conclave this week, so I feel like it's very appropriate. I feel like it's a very timely thing to say. Now, I think I saw someone mention it earlier because we are near the end of the stream. Someone asked my thoughts on the whole Trump Pope thing. I will say this much, all right? First, was I offended by it? No, not really. But that's also because I'm in that internet age, and so I don't really take a lot of things very seriously. Now, do I think it was in good taste? Do I think that it was the best thing that they could have done with their time? No. There's better things. I think that there's a lot of promises he still needs to keep. I think that there's a lot of stuff he's doing that I'm not really a big fan of. And I just, again, would rather that be where time and energy is being spent rather than on spending any length of time posting about popes, being pope or whatever. Again, the AI image of him as pope. But am I offended by it? Not really. I think that there are definitely a lot of people online that are overreacting to it. And even more so, the fact that you have some of these people who are claiming to be Catholic, people like Gretchen Whitmer, after the nonsense she pulled with the whole chip body of Christ, like, oh my gosh, talk about blasphemy. That's Gretchen Whitmer. Not to mention her positions on tons of anti-Catholic sentiments. And yet the fact that she's trying to claim some type of, oh, how dare you? Oh, I'm going to clutch my pearls. How dare you? Spare me. How about instead you take a step back from your child murder and then get back to me about being offended about that image? Why don't you fix that issue in your own personal life right now before making any comments about even any pope for that matter? Goodness me. King Rumsky, welcome back to Excommunicado. Icthulu, speaking of excommunicate, where's General Wingster? It's a great question. Victor Fontaine, come fly with me, says, I watched Chris Gore's Versus stream today, and there were a few on the panel that were promoting Thunderbolts as a good movie. Of course they were. Because the standard has been so low, I think some of them have just convinced themselves that it's good. And that's the issue. That's what I'm pushing back against. It's not that people say they enjoy it. I don't want to take anyone's joy away from it, from liking a movie. But when you're trying to argue that the film is good, trying to push objective qualities onto it. Now, I will be very interested to see if Mr. Muller, and E552 do a breakdown of the film. I'd like to hear their thoughts, honestly, about it. If there's anyone that's going to try to break things down objectively, it would be him. But anyway, that's going to be it for me tonight, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you all for being here. Deeple101, thank you for your super chat. Jean Hu, thank you for your double super chats. And also to the Rumble Rants, appreciate y'all as well. If I can pull them up here, I will again shout out. Abomination, of course, and Hot Dog 990. Thank y'all for your very, very generous Rumble Rants earlier. It really does mean a lot. And we talked about a lot of things tonight. My holy Doritos. Yeah, it was awful. Talk about offensive. I was offended by that, by Gretchen Whitmer. Not so much the other stuff. Somehow I lost my sub here. Usually your streams are during things like dinner, so I usually just lurk or listen on my phone. Well, I'm glad that you were able to join us. Glad that you were able to join. First Sci-Fi saying good night. Sally Kaiju, aloha. Jimmy A, good night and God bless. Justin C saying God bless as well. And yeah, guys, it's going to be an interesting week. We're gonna have a new pope this week. I really do think it's going to happen. So for those that are interested in that, right, on Wednesday, the conclave officially begins. The first vote will be in the evening time, Rome time. So That means it'll be afternoon our time the first vote will happen. And I will say right now, expect Black Smoke, that first vote. No Pope, first vote. I do think, however, we are likely to get a Pope by the second or third day, on Thursday or Friday. So very exciting times. Not often that this happens. And so obviously that will be where a lot of my thoughts and attention is this week. But we'll continue to follow the box office, of course, because we have a second weekend number to look at, right? Sunday to Monday drop-off. It'll be interesting to see exactly where that falls for the Thunderbolts movie. That will tell us a lot. If we see a massive drop, like we have for a lot of MCU films, that tells us, hey, even if it's better than Brave New World, which it very well could be, how much better is it going to look like? How much better is it going to be? How much better than other MCU films of similar time releases, right? Other things. Where does it fit? Where does it fall in and amongst that standard? That's going to be really the ultimate question that we have to ask ourselves. And so we, of course, will look at that data and that information. And also, we'll continue to break down other films. And let me just go ahead and pull up right now just to see what we're looking to have next weekend. Not really a whole lot. No real competition coming up. But to me, the most interesting thing about next weekend's box office, thing I'm probably going to pay the most attention to. Yes, it's going to be interesting to see what the Thunderbolts Week 2 numbers are. But even more so, will Sinners hold so well it ends up getting number 1 again and beating the second weekend of Thunderbolts? It could happen. Depends on how much of a drop Thunderbolts has, but you absolutely have a situation where you could have Sinners make more. So, anyway, thank you all for your time and your attention. Hold on, last thing. Arnold Hayes says, we keep us updated with the Tariff Hollywood situation. I mean, honestly, I don't really care much for the whole tariff stuff. Again, I know a lot of other people are covering that. I mean, I might bring it up in box office videos if it's relevant, but because a lot of this stuff is probably years from actually being implemented or having a real impact, and again, that could change. Probably not. Especially since I don't do daily streams or really daily video updates. Good night. Wish you all prayers for Pope Pizza. Yeah, Cardinal Pizza Bala has a chance, but man, if it's Pizza Bala, if for any reason Cardinal Pizza Bala gets elected to the papacy, there's going to be a part of me, whether it's true or not, is pure speculation on my part. And again, we don't know who it's going to be. But if it ends up being, yes, and there's a person named Cardinal Pizza Bala, by the way. If it ends up being Cardinal Pizza Bala, I cannot help but think for a moment, I wonder if some of these Cardinals were thinking, man, the meme potential on this is just too good for us to pass up. The good PR just from the choice alone is too much, especially if he ends up picking the name John, in which case he'd be Papa John. It kind of writes itself. Again, do I think it's going to happen? No, that's not how the church works. That's just not how things go. If for any reason he does get elected, it's not going to be because of that. But again, it's not going to be able to pass through the mind without coming up in some way. Let's see. Deeple101 though said over under on Pope being Italian. I don't bet. I don't make wages, but I would say there's a good chance of it being an Italian because there hasn't been an Italian in a while, since 1978 when John Paul II was elected. You could argue that Pope Francis was an Italian, but he spent a lot of his time in Argentina, right? He was culturally speaking Italian, obviously, ethnically speaking Italian, but as far as his how he was raised and everything like that, a lot of it is very much influenced South American. But I think it being an Italian from Italy, again, I think there's a good chance. I think a higher chance is like a Pizza Bala where, again, he's Italian, but he spent 30 years in the Holy Land, so maybe. And no, disgusting. Again, I'm not making bets, especially, it's actually sinful to bet on the Pope. So unless it's like a fun, like, ooh, who do you think it's going to be? And there's like no actual stakes, that's one thing. But making bets for real? No. Don't do that. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. I do finally have my May video updated. I featured that on my box office breakdown yesterday. You guys are awesome. Seriously, it's been great. Again, Thunderbolts, opening weekend, second worst in MCU history. Domestically, ticket sales, whatever it is that you want to look at. It's not looking pretty good. It's not looking good for the film. But could that change? That Sunday to Monday drop-off will tell us a bit. And then after that, we'll get more. Now, of course, we'll do a box office preview this coming Friday morning. It's when the preview goes live. And a box office breakdown next Sunday. And we, of course, will have Friday Night Tights this Friday. and tons of other things on the horizon. Crazy, crazy times. School year's almost over. Means the return of our morning streams over the summertime. We'll get that schedule out as soon as I can. And thank y'all again for being here. Let's see. Some Norwegian guy over on Great Machine saying, is there a Swede being considered, or am I confused something? I believe there is. I forget if he is from Sweden or if he was born in Switzerland and is a cardinal of Sweden. I think there is one that is under consideration, though. I do. Glad to finally join the OMB fan club from Deeple 101. Well, I appreciate that. Justin C. Mahler did an EFAP for Thunderbolts this past Sunday, 9-hour, 5-minute stream. I hope that he eviscerated the film, if I'm going to keep my respect of Mahler. I imagine he did. He's a good guy. Anyway, I do have to go. You guys are wonderful, amazing, beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. A blessed Monday. Continue to have a blessed Easter. It is the feast of St. Pius V. A lot of great feasts this week to pray for. Please pray for our cardinals as they elect a new pope. They might be guided by the Holy Spirit to choose the best person involved and really to bring clarity to the Vatican, because if there's some clarity brought to the Catholic Church, it will really, honestly, I think, extend out to the rest of the world as well. And we need someone to fight for reality and to fight for truth and to fight for God's word. So anyway, you guys are great. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illick and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribe Star people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. Also a huge shout out to my newest YouTube member, Raichu. And lastly, to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day.